So we started off helping. So there was an employee joined the company, and for almost 8 years was helping clients from Europe and USA to come and set up their operations in India. Some very large names, very large global names, be it Harley Davidson or Louis Vuitton. We started, I think, with 5 employees. Today we have more than 200 employees.
How did you keep your companies growing through tough challenges?
Because of our expertise, the all 4 partners were pretty strong in executing, and we saw our business grow 30% year on year during the COVID period itself. More clients gave us work to do. They were not able to come, and they were confident that we would do the job. If you are an entrepreneur, you have to take risks. Our most important thing that we brought to the table was
So without further ado, I'm Josh Roy, and this is Capital Tycoon, the place where future innovators come to learn.
My guest today is Sujay Sengupta. He is someone who's done a job for 20 years, then had an entrepreneur bug, as he described it. Then, with 4 friends, he started to work hard and struggle hard and decided to start 3 of their own businesses. Sujay, Mr. Sengupta, thank you for joining today. So my
pleasure.
Thank you. So my first question to you, what does entrepreneurship mean to you?
Okay. So entrepreneurship, of course, means different things to different people. And to me, an entrepreneur is someone who's started something of his own, his or her own, has taken a lot of risks because you go on a path which is not definitely clearly charted. So there are ups and downs that will happen down the route.
Sure.
One who is going to be very steadfast in holding on and treading the path despite obstacles coming. And the larger goal of being an entrepreneur is, in a country like India, which has a huge population, to be able to employ people and provide livelihood to others. So that's a bit of a larger social goal. But yeah, otherwise, it is really to be able to start something on your own.
Okay, makes sense. And in order to understand a person, you have to understand their context. So I wanted to ask you, what were the beginnings of your journey and background?
So beginnings, one is, of course, our journey as to in an employment. So I started working after college, doing a 9 to 5 job. Wasn't 9 to 5 actually, and it was 9 to 9 probably. And then worked for almost 15 years. And while we worked, at 2 different companies, and then thought it's time to do something of your own. Time to be your own Lord and Master, time to lead a path which you could carry on for a longer time, and of course, time to set up something where you thought one can employ people. So that's what hit me, and also hit all the 4 friends that we are. And eventually, that's when we decided to quit our jobs and start up our new company. And there was born CIBC as a company with 4 of us, and I think we started with just 2 employees working with us, and that was the beginning of the journey. And then, of course, it grew from there on.
Okay, interesting. And tell me more about your corporate experience.
Okay, so corporate experience is almost 15 years of consulting. First 7 years was consulting for large Indian companies. And these would be the multi-billion-dollar companies in India who have been doing business in India for many years. But we were to look at strategic intent and how to develop strategy for them for the future with a long 15 to 20-year horizon. and we worked for some of the largest corporates in India. And the biggest advantage was, we came in with a fresh insight and a mindset. For a company which has been selling or doing business for 100 years in that same area of work, the reason they came to us was to say, okay, you guys are not from the industry. You understand some amount of what the industry does, but give us a perspective of what the market will look like and what are the strategic changes that need to be done. So it was very exciting at that young age to be working for some of these large corporations, and also to be working with the CEOs, the chairmen, and the board of directors of these large corporations when we were young kids. So I think that's the most satisfying part of my career at that point of time. Then I switched jobs into another company, consulting company, which primarily helped international companies to come into India. And India was opening up as an economy. It did need foreign investments, and it needed all the foreign brands and products and services to come into the Indian market. Before that, India was a very, very closed economy. And every time you went up overseas, you saw a whole lot of products which were there, which were not in India. So we started off helping. So there was an employee, joined the company, and for almost 8 years was helping clients from Europe and USA to come and set up their operations in India. Some very large names, very large global names, be it Harley Davidson or Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, or Sanofi in pharmaceuticals, Michelin and tires. So a large number of organizations. So it was very satisfying to help these large international brands enter the Indian market and advise them for the first few years till they grew in the market. And then, of course, came our entrepreneurial bug, and we started on our own.
Okay. And I was wondering, was there like a single thing which drove you to become an entrepreneur, like a pivotal moment?
Yeah, I guess so. There was. I mean, to be honest, the company that we were working, I was working for 7-8 years. It was owned by an elderly gentleman who was running the company. And, having spent about 7-8 years in a consulting company, we were wanting to have some equity in the company itself. And the pivotal point came up when the owner of the company, decided that he would like to keep the equity to himself and eventually to his family, then rather than to give it to other senior people in the organization. So we've even had our clients coming and saying that why don't these people have equity? Because they should. So I think that was one of the points which made us rethink and also, accelerate or pivoted our goals of saying, hey, we wanted to be entrepreneurs. Now we're not going to be equity. Let's just jump ahead and move on. So that's what triggered us.
Okay, sure.
To be honest.
And now tell me more about the founding and growing of Fair Value Information Technology and CIBC, two of your companies, and also how you got acquired.
Okay. So I think Fair Value Information Technology is an outsourcing company, which we do outsourcing on the medical billing space for a client in the US. So we are captive working center for one of our clients. And we started, I think, with 5 employees when we initiated the startup. Today, we have more than 200 employees working in that same company.
Oh, wow.
And it's been an interesting journey of partnership, interesting journey of collaborating with the client, very close relationship with the client, understanding the needs and adapting yourselves. And it's also been a question of being able to hire the right people, train them to do the right job, and getting them to deliver the right results. So that's how we've really grown over the last 10 years in the Fair Value Information Technology. As far as CIBC goes, that's a consulting company where we continue to help international companies come into India. We continue to help companies from Europe, USA, and also expanded to the Australian market to help companies from there to come into India. We grew this market significantly over the last 10 years. became one of the prominent players in this market because of our expertise. The all four partners were pretty strong in executing, and our most important thing that we brought to the table was that we competed with the McKinsey's big four consulting companies, so to say. And what differentiated us was the gray hair or the lack of hair, but we actually did deliver results to our clients ourselves, and not necessarily some young junior students coming and giving them, a strategy. So I think it was the bundle of experience and then translating that to strategy for our clients, which really worked. And we've been happy to grow it to a significant size. Of course, number of employees is 50, but it wasn't a employee intensive. It's more of, in-depth work than the pure number of employees. So that's what we did. To the question of how we got acquired is COVID was a time when new things happened. And I think a lot of our businesses depended on traveling overseas. And 2 years of COVID, we did not. It was just sort of pure coincidence that the international player had appointed a banker to look at an acquisition in India, and they reached out to us having understood our profile. And our first outset was, no, we don't want to be acquired. We just want to continue our business. Maybe we just find to have a strategic tie-up, maybe just dilute 26%. But as discussions got deeper, I think they liked us, we liked them, and they made an offer that, we want to take you 100% and then still let you run the company. They were a very fast growing business. So that tempted us, and we eventually landed up selling our 100% to them, and therefore being acquired and eventually merging with the Acclime, which is the parent group right now.
Okay, interesting. And now, what interested you into consulting? Why consulting?
Well, I mean, it's in the early days, I used to laugh and say anyone who doesn't get a job calls himself a consultant, because that's another way of saying I'm unemployed and I do nothing.
Right.
But if I look at the flip side, consulting is a very interesting area to work in. The reason is when we are talking of market entry consulting, when we are talking of strategic advisory for market expansion, we are working across multiple industries. So you are handling almost every 3 months, you are dealing with a new industry. And sometimes even 1 or 2 months, you're dealing with 3-4 new industries. So the first few years was very exciting because you learned about so many industries. You got, so much of diversity, so much of knowledge. And you don't get bored selling the same thing or getting bored doing the same thing day in, day out. I think that's what kept me in consulting, is the excitement of to get into new areas of business, new industries, learn. I mean, earlier we were new businesses, new industries. Yeah, so I said that's what it's a real diversity of different industries, working with different industry and different functions that's kept us going. And I think that's what we really like in consulting.
Okay. And also to add, I wanted to mention GlobalAlley Ventures, which is your other business. So tell me more about the founding and growing story of that business.
Okay, so GlobalAlley Venture is something very recent that I've set up, and it's only been about a year and a half that has been set up. And the GlobalAlley Ventures, the purpose of is to really be as a holding company to look at new areas of investments that I want to get into. Having worked for so many years and having divested our equity in CIBC, we are looking to invest in some new businesses. A few of the areas which have caught my fancy is sustainability. So I've invested in a company which is into, sustainable container-based homes. So that's an investment done by by GlobalAlley Ventures. We've invested into a export company because we think in the years to come, India is going to become a major exporting destination, with a lot of European and American and other companies wanting to procure from India. And we've also invested in a sanitation business, a startup started by a professor from BITS Pilani, Goa, which brings about cheap sanitation solutions in areas which don't have sewers. In India, you don't have sewers. A lot of places you don't have sewers. So yeah, so the purpose is to do some sustainable investments and let them grow.
Okay, interesting. And how did you keep your companies growing through tough challenges such as COVID and the recession and essentially navigating through that?
Yeah. So when COVID started, I know we were all in a dilemma as to what's going to happen in the years to come and months to come, because the initial stages, we were all locked up at home completely. But we had client work to execute, and we did execute. The pleasant surprise was we continued to work with our clients from home, trying and executing the projects that we had in hand. And eventually that gave them a lot of confidence that we were able to deliver despite all the extraneous challenges that were outside, and the images that they would see on television of what's happening all over the country. So despite that, we continued with our work. And what that led to was a lot of client confidence. And we saw a lot of clients who could not come to India because normally they would have come to India and, expanded their business. So they had more trust in us and asked us to do a lot more activities. So in real sense, we saw our business grow 30% year on year during the COVID period itself. And they were the best performing years for us because more clients gave us work to do. They were not able to come, and they were confident that we would do the job. And we actually delivered results to them. So that's how we navigated ourselves in the consulting business. And as far as the healthcare goes, you see, healthcare is a cyclical industry. So when there was COVID, it actually led to more of healthcare expenditure and a lot of healthcare treatment. So a lot more laboratories in the US were treating COVID patients, and they were doing testing. So our work actually expanded. During the COVID period, we grew from 100 people to 200 people. So that was really a growth that happened during the COVID period. So I would say some of it is luck because we were in the healthcare industry. Some of it is, good fortune that we managed to have confidence of our clients who gave us a lot more work to do. And therefore, we managed to not only survive, but to grow.
Okay. And what is the importance of taking risks?
Well, importance of taking risk is if you are an entrepreneur, you have to take risks. And the risks can be small and large, and risk can be, a strategic risk, but there are risks on a daily basis. When we're working every day, you have to take decisions. It's very easy to say, this is risky and I will not do it. And you want to take a safe path. We did that when we were employees because you wanted to make a safe path so that there was no chance of adverse impact for which you would get hauled up by your boss and you might even lose your job. Here, there was no job to lose. And if we believed in something, we just took it. So as an entrepreneur, we say the biggest advantage of being an entrepreneur and the biggest trait of being an entrepreneur is the ability to take risks. So even post-COVID, when the economy was looking bad, or even during the COVID period where things were bad, we decided to move into a larger office space. Very few people would have said, let's invest and put money into looking at larger office space. On the contrary, we thought the rentals are low, office spaces are available, we will get a good bargain, let's take it. And we actually took that huge space that we did, and that in fact helped us in the acquisition by Acclime, because our client came and they saw that they have a nice fancy office, big place. They took the risk during this COVID, so they must be confident, and therefore, it eventually rewarded us.
Okay. And also, couldn't agree more that taking risks is probably one of the most, if not the most important trait of an entrepreneur. So what have been your most challenging moments in business?
Yeah, challenging moments in business are a couple. One is Suddenly, when you have to ramp up and you have to have resources, which is not very easy. And we had that during the COVID period when you had to quickly hire in the medical billing space for a fair value. It was extremely difficult to find people at that point of time, run interviews, select them and get them trained and move them on board. Second biggest challenge was to get infrastructure running during the COVID period, because when you do outsourcing, you're pretty much working 365 days of the year. You can't shut down. So while the city had shut down, we had to make sure all equipment was there. And during lockdown, for us to procure new equipment was very difficult. There was a stage we almost were raising hands and saying, I can't buy no new computers for my new employees that I have to hire because nothing was available. So we, in fact, had to then send our people to warehouses of shops and get them open, get special, police pass to be able to go and get these done. So it was extremely challenging for us at that point of time to look at both expansion of resources as well as expansion of infrastructure.
Okay. And what is your number one advice in entrepreneurship?
Well, number one advice is to take risks, and and we always call it calculated. You don't know how to calculate, you have to take risk. And the other thing is to have the tenacity. If you've taken a decision, you've taken a risk, have the tenacity to carry it through. Don't get hassled very quickly when success doesn't come and just abandon everything and go back.
True.
I think that's the most important thing.
Okay, yeah. And also, I think it's important to know if you're going to take a risk, the outcome of it. I think.
Yeah.
Others, which is what you said, calculated risk. And then,
yeah.
What do you have any management tips?
Management tips? No,
yes.
I don't think I didn't do formal management education.
Okay.
And I don't believe it. I mean, I wouldn't say management tips as too much, but one of the general management tips is most important, which we see, and I serve on the board of some very large companies as well, is to be human in nature and to understand that your biggest assets are your people, and nothing will happen without your people. You're only one. Everything else depends on what everybody else does. So to focus on people and create a nice working environment and support them and let them thrive.
Okay. And now, what does the economic landscape look like from your perspective?
Well, as far as India and global, there are some conflicting views that are coming in. When I look at the global perspective, we see a recent travel to Europe shows that the Ukraine war has had an impact in northern part of Europe. We do see energy prices rising and therefore having an impact on the economy. We see a lot of companies now getting into a fairly defensive and closed mode, and they are presuming that they're going to start having some reduction in growth in the next year. Yeah. If you look at the US economy, it's been booming whole of last year. Economists have been talking that there will be a recession coming down. I don't know. Difficult for me to say from here. Whatever I see, I still think that's a mixed feeling. And as far as India goes, it's been strange, because if you look at the economic growth has been decent in India. The stock market is highest ever, which is unprecedented. And one would have thought that given the economy is bad, the global scenario is bad, the Indian stock market should have been low, but it is not. It's really at the highest. On the other hand, there are enough people I hear in the country who are saying that next year is likely to be a sort of recession trend coming in. So will that happen? Won't that happen is a question mark. But I think globally there is likely to be a recession. India is probably going to have some impact, but not that much of an impact because of the domestic market.
Okay. And what are you working on next?
Well, I think one of the areas that has excited me is to work in the sustainability space. And the last 3 years, while within CIBC, I've been doing, and now Acclime, doing a lot of work with the Gates Foundation
Okay.
and in the sanitation space. And that's excited me to really work towards, bring in new technologies which will help uh, solve problems for the common man, and especially people who are not that privileged. So I think that's an area which has excited me. So I've both invested in companies which are working in the space, and I'm also spending a lot of time myself. So I
Okay.
think that's the next thing that I would love to, work on.
Okay. Good to hear. And do you ever want to get back to a 9 to 5 job?
Seriously, I mean, it's been too long, far away. And I think I'm absolutely happy in the space that I have. And if anyone were to tell me, will you get another 9 to 5 job? I'd strictly say, absolutely not.
Okay. And
Once you're in
good
this
answer.
space, you really don't want to get back.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I suppose if you're an entrepreneur and you've worked for that long, I would understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now my last question to you is, who inspires you?
Who inspires me? I guess part of the whole lot of inspiration comes from an uncle of mine who is no more. But he had a very strong influence on me when I was starting my career. And I remember when I wanted to be an engineer, and my parents wanted me to be an engineer, and I started studying for engineering. And he said, Sujay, do you want to be an engineer or do you want to be a CEO? I said, well, of course I want to be a CEO. He said, don't study engineering, go into a general degree. And I went into studying economics after that, both my bachelor's and then master's. Second was he himself was an entrepreneur in different forms, and all his life he became an entrepreneur. So he would hate to be working or reporting to someone working on a job. Well, those days I couldn't afford to sustain myself, and therefore did a job. And the first chance I had to leave and become an entrepreneur, I did. And I think I kept getting inspired by him. And I was most happy to tell him that, listen, I have now started something on my own. The third thing is our nature of our business meant I travel a lot. And this uncle traveled through the world. He would never stay more than 4 days in a city. And he would keep traveling to different parts of the world. And every time I would get tired of traveling, I would just think about him and say, listen, he's 90 and he's still traveling so much. How can I get so tired? We just need to move on. So I think he gave me a lot of inspiration.
Okay, that's wonderful to hear. And I think, yeah, that's a fascinating story. So now we have a closing tradition in this podcast. The previous guest leaves a question for the next guest, but they don't know who it's for. So my last guest wrote a question for the next guest, which is you, is what is a creative passion or hobby that you wanted to do, but you never did?
Okay. The creative passion and hobby is, for me, is to do a lot of interior designing.
Okay.
Completely different from what I do day in and day out. And I started, so earlier years, I had some time and I would spend some time and doing redesign our houses from then on.
Yeah.
But even now, I think every time I build a house, I get into it. Every time we renovate the office, I get into it. So I keep doing that, and I think I love it.
Okay.
But of course, every time I tell my wife, if I wasn't a consultant, I would have been an interior designer.
Okay. So you might have
So
turned
I can't take it full time, but yeah, that's what I would have loved to probably be do full time. But yeah, it's something that I'm able to do bits and pieces only.
Okay. Well, it has been a pleasure talking to you, Mr. Sengupta, and thank you for joining today, and appreciate your time, of course, as I understand you're very busy. And yeah, so thank you for coming on.
So, well, thank you very much, Josh. It's been a pleasure to be on your show, and really appreciate the way you've conducted it and the whole concept that you've been doing. I think you've got all the traits of being a great entrepreneur yourself.
I hope so. Thank you. And
thank you.
Yes. Okay. And I hope that
Okay.
I'm sure lots of people will find learn a lot from our conversations, and I think
I
a
hope
lot
so.
of value.
Whoever gets any benefit out of it, I'll be more than happy.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.